Hi, I thought we'd have a little look at doing these flamingos today, using a bit of cling film for the wings just to get the effect of that, and keeping it quite loose and floaty. So to start off with, you're going to draw out the flamingos. So just draw the shapes, lovely simple S-bend for the shape. It's a couple of S-bends here, little egg shape here, nice big long body, big chubby body coming across here, just to give you some shape there. So you're drawing these shapes out first of all. Then what we're going to do is get some cling film and just this old food wrap or something, soft plastic anyway, and we're just going to form this into the shape of the body before we start doing anything else, before we start putting the paints on or anything like that. We're just going to form this round to give you the shape of the wings and the feathers and everything which are on the bird there. So just get that ready and waiting. Another piece here for the other side. So a bit of cling film, just get that onto your dry paper to start with, and just getting that into, this will form the effect of the feathers, just to give you a little bit of fun really, to give you some shaping into it. Once you've got that there, so you can move it to one side while you do the painting to start with. When you're playing with cling film, it has to go onto wet paper, so it has to go on when all the paints are wet. So it's best to get your cling film into the shape that you want it before you start, so you know where you're going to go with it. So once you've got that, just move it to one side. Move that one to the other side there, so I can just pick it up and pop it on when I need to, and then we can make a start. So we're going to put a wash over all this to start with, and the colours into the feathers to start with straight away. So we're going to mix up some puddles of paint. So I've mixed up a couple of reds, a couple of blues. This is cadmium red or vermilion or something like that, alizarin crimson, and a couple of blues. This is cerulean blue and ultramarine blue. So they're sitting there in little puddles waiting for me to start. So I'll just move that picture out the way so we can get on with the main part. I'm going to wet the paper all over with some clean water using a mop brush, very soft brush, and then I'm going to paint with a big round. I'm using Bockingford paper. This is 425 gram Bockingford paper, but you can use 300 gram or another type of paper, but as long as it's watercolour paper. So this is clean water, so I'm just going over the whole of the area, not worrying too much about where it's going so far, but I want it to stay glossy wet, so it should be clean water. Mine's got a vague pink tinge because I've just been doing a demonstration of this, so it's not particularly clean. So going backwards and forwards, make sure that you've got no dry patches in it, because you want to make sure that this is staying glossy wet all over, because it all has to be wet when you put the cling film on. You don't want it sitting in puddles, you don't want it sitting in great big puddles in there, so I always have my board slightly tilted. So I'm just taking out any excess water, but also just making sure that it's covered everywhere. And then I'm going to swap to my other brush and just going to have some fun with these colours. I'm going to put in a little bit of the light blue for the background, coming through the bird. Whatever you do one side of a neck, make sure it comes out the other. So just wiggle your brush around and get some of these varying colours into it. Little bits of the blues. I don't want to get into all the great detail of all the background. I should have taken my paper down a little bit firmer. It's just popped up at the edges there, but it'll be fine. So a little bit of the blues in there. I can have a bit of the ultramarine blue, not too strong with the ultramarine blue. You don't want it to dominate over the picture. So a little bit of the blue, just wiggling your brush around. Give it a bit of interest for the background there. A little bit of more the paler blue around that side perhaps. Then in with some of the pinks there, I might use just a touch of alizarin crimson. I might run that through the bird as well, so it goes pink and purples. So you've got some of that coming into the background, vague shapes of birds in the background and things maybe. Just give it a little bit of interest. It'll go slightly purple if it mixed with the other ones. That's the alizarin crimson in there. You can start to bring that down the neck as well. Just start to give it little hints. So if it runs either side of that, it doesn't matter. Start to bring in the other colour, the cadmium red or the vermilion. Just start to bring that in vaguely round where the neck's going to be. Not too strong at the moment, just let it run into the background there. You can flick a bit on if you want to, just to give you some effects and patterns. Then increase the strength of this a little bit now, so you're getting this stronger colour. You start to put some of these reds around where the feathers are going to go. Just around the body here, into the main part of the body. Leave some white in there as well. Just a little bit so it starts to go down the leg, into the neck. So stronger colours into the neck, around the body here. This is both the reds and the vermilion and the cadmium red. A little bit stronger just underneath here, down the body. And then we're going to get that bit of cling film or food wrap or whatever you, soft plastic, and we've already formed the shape of it, so we're just going to drop that on and let it go. Don't have it too tightly crinkled, except round by the neck there. So just let it curl up the neck a little way, and then it can go into all that little feathery shapes you've got, and it will just form those little patterns and shapes that would naturally occur when you put cling film onto wet paper. The same on this side. Just going to drop it on there, keep it within the shape of the body. So just let it drop on, so you've got these different patterns, different shapes will appear, and as it dries it will form these little cling film shapes there, little wing feathers. So not much more I can do with that until it's dry. So I'm just going to make sure there's no dry patches, so run around with a bit of kitchen roll, tissue, something like that, so there's no puddles sitting anywhere on the picture, and just let it dry out. So I'm just going to let that dry naturally. You can't dry it with a hairdryer or anything because it blows the cling film off. So we're just going to let that dry and go and have a quick cup of tea or a cup of coffee or something. I'll come back to it in okay, this should be nice and dry now. I've left it for a little while, so just to dry off. You need to let it dry off naturally rather than with a hairdryer, because it does tend to blow the cling film off. So once the paint stopped moving, you should be able to just whip it off, and you have this lovely texture here, which looks a little bit like the feathers. So now we can enhance the rest of the picture. I'm going to swap now to a slightly smaller brush, something like a 6 or 8 round, and we're going to put the necks and the heads onto these birds. So we're just going to use some clean water and carefully now just wetting round the shape of the neck and the head. So just carefully bringing it down, keeping this nice and wet, and we're just going to very gently let that water run into the body. So we're just putting the water on so it goes right into this body here, over this bottom end of the neck and into the body. So now I'm going to use a little bit of the reds. Just when you're putting the colours on, just bear in mind it's lighter on this side, darker on that side. So we can run a little bit of the orangey red down the main part of the face here, carefully around the eye, under the chin, bringing it down around the neck. So as it's wet, this will just allow you to put the colour on and let it run and blend quite easily. Oops, I've got a little bit of dark paint in there. I'll just rub it in to blend it through. Then I'm going to put a little bit of this is the orangey red, whichever red you've decided to use for that. And again, as it comes down here, I'm just going to let it run back into the water, not as far as I've put the water on. Don't rub it too much, otherwise you'll lose the patterning off there. Just tidy that bit up, bring it down around the eye, a little bit neater with that. Then I'll go on to the crimsony red, slightly darker red, and I just want to bring that down a little bit darker under his chin, around the neck here, just to give this some shape to the face. So it's lighter on that front edge and darker down this back edge. So just have the crimsony red coming down the flamingo's neck. Just let it blend into the one you've already put on there. Get a little bit darker around that curve. You could even get it a little bit stronger and darker than that by adding a little bit of blue to that alizarin crimson. Just make it a little bit darker for that one. And into this side, a little bit darker down there. If you need to, just clean your brush, dry it out, and just lift out again the lighter edge. So just make it a little bit paler on that front edge, a little bit pale on the front of his head there. And if you've got a very sudden transition down here between the cling film effect and the, just put a bit more paint on down there, and the neck itself, you can just put a bit of cling film back on again. Just drop it back on over that bottom part, so the patterning will then continue up the neck as well. So while that one's drying, I should do the same with this one. Just wet it, got a bit of a dark bit in there, so I'll just rub that and blend that out. And then just bringing the water round, so it comes round the eye, down onto the bill a little way, carefully round the right. So this is just water at the moment. Carefully down the shape of the neck, just a bit of a little blob there which I didn't want. Let's take that out. And then carefully down the neck, following the shape round. This is just water going on, so this allows the colours, the watercolours, to blend. Down again into, take the water right into where you've put the, just dot it on into where you've put the cling film on there. So again, I'm going to go round with the red. This is the orangey red. And this time it's lighter on this side, darker on this side. So just put a bit of extra colour down here, and then I'll come back and put some darker bits in. So just bringing this down, follow it through. Oops. More orangey red. Follow it down the neck. Into this, I've put water right up into here, so I'll just let that fade back into the water so it runs away. So water's a long way off there, so you can't reach the edge of it and forms a hard line. Then a bit more of the darker red, the alizarin crimson, give them a bit of shape down underneath here. Let it run into it, so you can just wiggle your brush around so it blends into the rest of that colouring. Just wiggle your brush so all this side's slightly darker and this side slightly lighter. And again, in front of his head here, it would be a bit darker because this is the light side, that's the dark side. Form that shape round there. And then if you need to, just clean your brush, dry it out, and you can just run a clean brush down that edge. It just makes it even lighter down that edge to give the shape. Perhaps a little bit of light underneath the chin. I'll just take that puddle out. So I've just cleaned my brush, dried it out. I've got a horrible irritating bit of blue just there, so I'm just going to rub my brush over it, take it out, keep drying your brush, and then put a bit of red back into it again because it's still wet. I will mess around with it, blend it in. There we go. So just lift that out around there to give them a bit more shape. Okay, so again, while this is still wet down here, I can re-cling this bottom end just to make him look a little bit as if the neck is part of the rest of the body, just with a small bit of cling film on there, and just let that dry out while I do the other bits on there. This one should be nearly dry by now. So while that's drying, this should be almost dry, but before it dries completely, I'll peel that back and just do the legs. So I'm working somewhere else on the picture. So I'm just going to wet down the leg, clean water, let down the leg, again into the body a little way, and then a little bit of blue down the one side of the leg, and just peel it back. Let the cling film touch the top of it, not all the way down the leg. Same on this side, Just wet it down there into the body with the clean water and the bluey colour, just a bit of ultramarine blue down the left hand side of the leg. If you need to, put a little bit more red at the top there, and just lay your cling film just over the top bit so it looks like it joins on with it. I'm just going to leave those on there for a moment. By the time I've done that, these areas should be fairly dry, so I shall just wet the beak. Careful to avoid the eyes or the rest of the body at the moment. Just wet the beak area on this one, just dampen it slightly so it's not soaking wet. I'm just going to have a little bit of weak red into that part just to give the beak a little bit of colour, but let it go back to being white again. Same on this side, just dampen it slightly with a small brush and then take the puddle out of it by drying your brush, a little bit of kitchen roll. So to take the puddle out, and again just a little bit of red into that light part of the beak there. Pause for a minute, let it all dry. So I'll just let it all dry out completely, and we'll come back and just put the final details in a moment. This is now nice and dry, so we can either take the cling film off now, or we can leave it for another few moments and put the beak on. So first of all, you want a little bit of yellow for the eye itself. So just a tiny little bit of yellow, doesn't matter which yellow. And just let that dry. And then onto the dry paper, we go on with something dark. You can use a indigo or a Payne's grey or just a bit of ultramarine blue and burnt umber, just to give you something dark. Paint this onto the dry paper here. Paint it down. A little bit of a nostril. A little bit of the beak coming down here. Very strange shovel-like beaks they have. Wobbled a bit there. Same on this one, as this little beak coming down here. Down into the bottom part. And a little dot in the middle of that now, that yellow bit, a little bit of a dot there, giving a bit of character. Take your cling film off, and then you should have a little bit of casual feathers, so you can have a little bit of shape like that. If you've wobbled a little bit in some places, you just clean your brush, a little bit of a damp brush there, dab it, and it should just lift out. If you've got one or two little stray wobbly bits where you don't want them, again just around that neck there maybe. You could always re-wet it and cling it again if you need to. Perhaps even just splash on a little bit, not too strong, a little bit of pinks and things, just flick it on, just flick your brush and give them a bit of life and movement with a bit of the pink colour around there, around the edges there. And that's it. Some fabulous flamingos